the Las Vegas tunnel is not an interesting solution to anything.
Well, how does it compare to the alternative project that was proposed?
Which alternative project? I mean, because a bus line.
You're aware there was a bidding war. There was a bidding competition for this project, right?
Okay, what was the other?
Well, so if you're critical of the project and you didn't even know there was another bid,
I'm critical of the end result.
But you don't know what the other bid was, so you're not really being fair. You're comparing it to an abstract concept. What were you comparing it to?
Which is why they have it set up, I believe, as an Uber type system where you actually have to call instead of having stations. It's a weird thing to do an on-call thing.
There are stations.
There are stations, but you don't actually go to the station to get the ride because they say it's an on-call type setup.
Okay, so I'm going to say that I don't think you know that much about the system. Well, how do you think the Model Y compares with the Mach-E?
I think they're both, honestly, Mach-E is a pretty good car. I mean, Ford did a good job of the design and packaging. I personally have yet to drive that one. We did have one of our riders drove it and liked it a lot. It seems, I mean, the Model Y is a pretty good car too. I think they're fairly closely matched.
Let me be blunt. Would you agree with me that the Model Y costs less and has more range?
I have to look at the pricing. The numbers are pretty close price-wise, if I recall. And range is always... Range, like the way all EV range is measured, is a much fuzzier number than the hard number that all the manufacturers give. Same with
EPA rated range. Would you agree with me that that for similar pricing, the Model Y has much better range?
I guess if that's what the EPA numbers say, then sure. But in real
okay, so put it this way: an all-wheel drive Mach-E tops out at 270 miles of range. And an all-wheel drive Model Y goes over 300 miles, EPA rated range.
Sure.
With this making things worse, wouldn't you expect that Teslas would have higher crash rates than other cars?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, my problem...
It's making things worse. If it's making things worse, wouldn't that mean that they would have higher crash rates?
I think they have potential to have crashes in conditions that normal, purely human-driven cars wouldn't have, because the problem is not a technological problem. It's a human problem. It's a problem with the way humans interact.
But you're saying it's making things worse. If it's making things worse, they should crash more.
I think there's potential for that to be, yeah. Okay, so with level 2 autonomy, it requires the driver to be ready to take over at any given moment. It basically changes the task of driving from an active task into what would be known as a vigilance task. And this is the kind of thing that humans are notoriously bad at. The more the car does, the less the humans are able to really focus and be ready to take over at a moment's notice. It's the same fundamental problem. People are not good at letting something do almost everything and simultaneously being ready to take over with no warning.
Do you know who Lex Friedman is?
Lex Friedman. No, I've heard the name, or I'm not placing it right now.
Are you aware that he studied this very issue with Tesla cars at MIT?
Oh, I've read some of these studies.
Are you aware that he did such a study and he found that it wasn't really a problem?
I don't believe that, I'm afraid.
Okay, so you have a homework assignment.
Teslas don't have redundant sensors. They don't have sensor cleaning systems. They could easily...
What do you mean by redundant sensors?
If you have an autopilot and you're not actively paying attention and you lose a camera, there's no redundancy system, so you could
there's multiple forward-looking cameras. There are redundant systems. What are you talking about? What's not redundant about having multiple cameras?
They're not all doing the same job.
What happens when somebody disengages their seatbelt and unclicks their seat, takes their seatbelt off while they're driving autopilot? Are you telling me you don't know what happens?
Oh, I know what happens. It'll warn you and it'll turn off.
FSD mode. Now, I don't have a nav point set. I'm going to unbuckle. This is what happens immediately. The car literally has come to a stop and put on my hazards, and you can't drive.
How does the Tesla computer work?
They're processing it very differently. You've seen how the screens...
How does it work?
It's not the same as a human.
I didn't ask you that. How does it work?
Wait, okay, what would you like to know? Or is your goal here to try to suggest that I'm somehow ignorant of the in-depth way these things work, or do you actually want to know how these Tesla computers work?
I think you might be ignorant. I'm trying to figure out whether you know.
About the term full self-driving. What does that sound like? Full self-driving. I guess that means what? partial.
That is the hardware feature set you're paying for that someday will be unlocked and will allow the car to drive itself fully.
That full self-driving sure sounds like full self-driving. And on the website, it repeatedly says full self-driving. People who aren't,
and then it says,
like you or I,
it says full self-driving isn't available yet. You can buy it now, and when it becomes available, you'll be able to use it. You still need to be vigilant. You still need to pay attention. You still need to follow the instructions.
And the tone is clear, and it's a little.
The tone. The tone. There's no evidence that they're causing more crashes than other cars. There's zero. You don't have any. You don't have any data to show me that there are more Tesla accidents with autopilot engaged than there are cars that don't have autopilot engaged or other cars.
I think the sample size of Tesla is too small right now to really accurately determine.
But 1 million cars driving 10,000 miles a year is 10 billion miles a year. How many miles do you need?
I don't even know if you would term it in terms of miles. I think it.
Okay, what standard do you need?
I don't think that's not. I don't think that's the metric I would be looking for. Go to level 3, minimal level 3, where if the driver is not paying attention, the car has a safe way to get off the road. Why is that such a problem?
So I'm confused about this. It sounds like you think that a Tesla can't pull over to the side of the road when autopilot disengages.
Not reliably and not safely.
What evidence do you have to say that? I've seen videos where it happens.
I've seen it do it. It stops on its own. It stops in its lane at best.
I'm going to unbuckle. This is what happens immediately.
You just brought up pedestrians. How many pedestrians has Tesla's full self-driving or autopilot killed?
Waymo hit one. I know that.
I didn't talk about Waymo.
Doesn't matter. I'm talking about self-driving as an overall entity, because these are all the same problems. They're all dealing with the same problems, and you can't get hung up on Tesla or Waymo or whatever. We're all dealing.
Well, you can get hung up on Tesla because Tesla has a better solution.
I don't know that.
I know. I know you don't know that. That's part of the problem.
I don't know it either. I think you have a lot of things you would love to believe that that's true, but there's no real proof of that. We don't know that.
Did you watch Autonomy Day?
Did I watch Autonomy Day? I did watch some of Autonomy Day. Yes.
I'm going to suggest that you need to watch Autonomy Day, maybe more than once.
Why?
Because then you might actually learn what Tesla's doing.
I know what Tesla's doing.
If you didn't watch Autonomy, do you know who Andrej Karpathy is?
Yes, I've heard the name.
Okay. Don't tell me you know what Tesla's doing with self-driving if you don't really know who Andrej Karpathy is. You don't know who Jim Keller is either, right?
Wait, but none of this actually matters, though.